It doesn't do you any good to be clear on the other side of the bridge or the other side of the river or the other side of town. You need to be where your target customers are. In the area where you want to do business, is the population growing? Is it shrinking? Is the population getting older? Is a larger percentage of the population becoming elderly? That's happening in many of the Western countries. That's happening in Japan, and it's actually a very big concern in places like Japan. What about socioeconomics? Is the family changing? Are families having fewer children? Is family income getting bigger? Is it getting smaller? Are more families are the husband and the wife both working outside the home? Or in most families, does one work outside the home and one work in the home? Are more families divorcing? Are fewer people getting married? Are they getting married later? What about changes in industry? In the last 20 years, we've seen a whole host of new industries that have come up simply because of Bill Gates and his vision for the internet. All of the e-commerce, all of the software businesses, all of the electronic funds transfer businesses, all of the businesses that rely on the internet and on computer technology were not even dreamed of 30 years ago. Or maybe they were dreamed of, but they were just a dream. The textile and apparel industry has gone through radical changes in the last 20 years. You go somewhere and have to stand in line for a very long time because service is slow or because something's not working properly. Rather than just getting frustrated that you have to stand in line, think about what you could do differently that would solve that problem. Is there something that people are doing now that if you apply new technology could be done differently? That's what Meg Whitman did with eBay. It used to be in the United States, if we had things that we were tired of and we wanted to sell them, rather than just giving them away or throwing them away, we would either put a notice in the newspaper, put a want ad in the newspaper and try to sell it, or if we have a lot of stuff, we would have what we call a yard sale or a garage sale. And some Saturday morning, we'd put a sign out on the street and we'd lay all these things out in our front yard or on the sidewalk, and we'd sell them to whoever came by. And we'd advertise it in the newspaper a few days ahead of time. And we would basically just sell things on the sidewalk. Can't do it all the time, but we were allowed to do it, once a year or once every 6 months, something like that. Homework. It's not easy to come up with a good idea for a profitable venture. And you may have to come up with lots and lots and lots and lots of ideas before you hit on the one that will be successful for you. It would not be unusual to have to come up with 50 ideas or 100 ideas or maybe 500 ideas before you hit the one that will become very successful for you. That's part of where that perseverance comes in. You've got to be willing to just keep working at it until you come up with the right idea. But some good questions to ask yourself when you have an idea that will help you test that idea. What's the opportunity? What gap is there? What need is not being met that this idea meets? What's the solution? Where there's a problem, you have to stand in line for a very, very long time to buy that package of noodles at the local market. What could be done differently so that you don't have to stand in line so long? Who could benefit from your idea? Who would be willing to pay money for your product or your service and the solution that it provides to them, or the the need that it satisfies for them, and how many people could benefit. If it's only maybe 5 people and they're only willing to pay a little bit of extra money for it, you probably don't have a real successful potential venture. If there are 1,000 people, you've got a better chance of a successful venture. Even if there are 50 or 100 people, depending on what the idea is and how much you make each time you sell that idea, it could be profitable. But if it's only a couple of people, probably better to think of something else. How frequently would people purchase your idea or your product or your service? Is it something that they would buy once in a lifetime and they don't need to ever buy it again because it lasts and lasts and lasts, and it's something that they only use infrequently and it's great, but they only need to buy one? If so, then you need a lot of people buying it for that to be a successful idea for you. And that can sometimes be tricky to figure out, that you need to very carefully calculate what it will cost you. This you need to calculate very, very, very carefully. And you may even need to make some samples and do some trial and error to determine how much it will really cost. But you need to know before you put it out, put a price on it, and before you start selling it, you need to know how much it's going to cost you to make and to deliver that product or that service. So, in summary, on discovering profitable ventures, entrepreneurship is a risk. Having your own business, developing new products, developing new services is a risk, because there is no guarantee that you will be successful. There's no guarantee that just because you come up with a good idea, that it's the right time, that people are willing to pay the price that you're asking for it. You don't know until San Francisco. And the reason I have that hotel is because you may or may not have heard of the Marriott chain, and you may or may not have heard of J.W. Marriott, J. Willard Marriott. He, I believe, also died a few years ago, but he was a very, very successful entrepreneur. He started with a little hot dog and soda pop stand, a little kiosk on the streets of Washington, D.C., 30, 40, 50 years ago, which became one of the most successful, one of the most profitable hotel chains around the world. How many people need to stand up and just stretch? Now, give you some idea of different types of businesses, how different businesses have gone about solving problems. 2 questions. The first question: what problem does this business solve? What did I talk about a little while ago? I talked about identifying a gap, identifying a need, and filling that need. This is another way of saying the same thing. What problem or what gap does your business idea solve? Second question: how does it solve that problem or fill that gap profitably? There's no sense, unless you have more money than you know what to do with and you want to just give away your money indiscriminately, there's no sense in taking on a business idea that you cannot do profitably, or that you at least don't think you can do profitably. If you want to give your money away, there are easier ways to do it. So you need to look at that business idea you have and see if there's a realistic chance that you can do that business profitably. These are the 2 questions that a successful business model needs to answer. I want to give you some examples of successful business models, and I'll tell you right up front that these are largely examples that I took from the United States. They may not all be familiar to you, and many of them are being implemented on a very large scale, but the ideas, the underlying ideas, are just as pertinent, just as valuable for very small businesses and just as valuable here in Nigeria as they are in the United States. First one I'm going to talk about is McDonald's, and this is the fast food chain that Ray Kroc started. I mentioned him as one of very successful entrepreneurs in America. Over in the upper right corner, you see the famous golden arches. That's the McDonald's logo. What's the business model here? McDonald's sells hamburgers. They sell hamburgers, started selling hamburgers and soft drinks, Coca-Cola, milkshakes, French fries. They now sell certainly an expanded menu. They have cheeseburgers, they have fish sandwiches, they have chicken sandwiches, they have breakfast, a breakfast menu in the morning. I think they may have added some fruit juices and some different types of drinks, but they still have a pretty simple, pretty streamlined menu. What McDonald's has done and what Ray Kroc invented as a business model was something that has become known as fast food. Food that you can just order it and pick it up and eat it very quickly. You don't have to take a lot of time. It all goes very fast. He also franchised his business in order to expand it first throughout the United States, first in the Chicago area. He launched his business in the Chicago area, in the central part of the United States, and then he expanded it within that area, just as if you would expand maybe in Anambra state, and then you would go on and expand elsewhere in Nigeria. He expanded across the United States, and then around the world. I still remember in 1973 when the first McDonald's opened in Paris, and there are now McDonald's in most countries around the world. What does McDonald's sell? You may say, well, you just told me they sell hamburgers and French fries and they sell soft drinks and milkshakes. What they sell is children. Because families were smaller, because there was larger income, because more of them had one or even two cars, because she hired these individual women who wanted to make money, they were motivated to go out and to sell and to be successful themselves. A break from me. So with that, let's go ahead and have some lunch.
Together, deliberately just decided to.
I know she can't come up with that mention. No problem. Okay.
they were examples taken from very large companies, but I hope that I was clear that the underlying business models are things that can be applicable even to very small businesses. And in fact, every one of these corporations that uses the business models that I showed you, started using them as a very, very small company, in many cases as one individual entrepreneur. So yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, my question is very simple. My name is Obi. My question is very simple. These are some business models we have on the screen there. Mostly models from outside the country. Why don't they choose some of the small business models in Nigeria to give us an example? Since we are Nigerian, we are going to the terrain of business outside is not the same thing with this country. That's my question.
The main things and value that I bring to you, ladies and gentlemen, please, if I can please have your attention, I cannot shout over you. One of the biggest things that I bring in value to you when I come is outside experience that you have not had the opportunity to have here in Nigeria. You can look around yourselves and look at the models of business that is successful so far here in Nigeria. You don't need me to come here and tell you about those models that you can observe and experience yourself. The value I can bring is to show you examples that you may not have had exposure to or may not have had experience with, but to try to present them in a way that you can, in fact, get some ideas from them. And quite often, we do the same thing in the U.S. We don't just look within the United States for examples and ideas for our businesses. We look all over the world. I can assure you that the people from Starbucks, when they're thinking about new products, they don't look within the United States for new products. They travel to India and to Ethiopia and to South Africa and to Colombia and literally all over the world to see what kind of coffee beverages and tea beverages people drink in local cultures elsewhere to get ideas for new beverages to introduce in the U.S. So your question is quite a good one, but in fact what I can bring to you of the greatest value are those things that you may not have had a chance to experience firsthand yourself. Does anybody have any questions about the specific business models?
Good morning. My name is Megan Chukujama. My question is, these business models, do they pay any tax or is there any incentives to them when they were selling fast industry there abroad? Or do they pay tax immediately they start up their business?
Pay taxes. I can assure you that they pay a lot of taxes. Absolutely. There is no business in the United States that gets away with not paying taxes. It's not a function of the business model, it's a function of our taxation laws and of being registered as a business, regardless of size of business. In the United States, if you are doing business, you pay taxes, period.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Otobo. And first of all, I want to comment on the first question one of our colleagues here asked. He asked about the development we copy from other developed nations. I want to say, as a developing nation, we are meant to look at the developed nation and look at what they do and copy what they do until we become developed. Thank you. Then my question here is that on this Zara retail, speed to marketing, rapid fire development and delivery, you were saying something about supply line 35 plus fashion season and here versus 4 to 6. So I need you to throw more light on that because I didn't get you very well.
What you wanted to know is a little bit more about the speed to market, if I understand correctly. is that they have taken the process of going from product concept and initial design of a product through the manufacturing, shipping, all the way to delivery to their stores. And what used to take traditionally up to 6 months to go from the initial design of a garment until the garment was in the store, they have now compressed that to a matter of 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks, depending on the style. They have done that with the help of technology. What used to have to be couriered back and forth in hard copy, paper copies of designs and so forth, they now shoot back and forth electronically, instantly, rather than having a couple of days to courier something on an airplane. They have compressed their decision time. They pay a lot more attention to trend forecasting, so that they're doing things very quickly. They're making decisions on things such as color of garment, closer to the time that they actually produce the garment and put it into the store. They have compressed the shipping time through their logistics and distribution systems and so forth. So they have literally taken every bit of extra time, what they now consider wasted time, out of that whole supply chain. And increasingly other kinds of retail companies and companies selling products rather than services will also be squeezing that production time and that supply chain to take out any extra waste. It means that they have higher quality standards. They don't allow time for garments to be remade or to be reworked because they weren't done right the first time. They don't allow that. They just don't accept it. So if you're a supplier, if you're a manufacturer, and your quality is too high, then you just get dropped as a supplier because they can't afford for you to have to remake garments that you make improperly or that you make defectively. They have to be made the right the first time. It means that if they say they give you a ship date of January 5th, those goods have to be in the container on that ship or on that plane January 5th, not January 6th, not January 10th, not January 20th. There's no extra time anywhere in that supply chain. It means that they take advantage of the time difference in their communication. They may have somebody sitting in Barcelona communicating at 8 o'clock at night with somebody in a factory who has just come into work that morning to make sure that they don't even lose 8 hours overnight of time. It means they literally squeeze every extra minute out of their time or electronically. And we'll talk a little bit more about the importance of that later on this afternoon. Okay, so in summary, addressing the fact that a business model needs to identify a problem and a solution to that problem, and it has to identify a profitable means of solving the problem if it's going to be a successful business model. So when you're looking at the model you have for your business currently, or looking at perhaps adapting or developing a new business model for your company, you need to ask yourself what problem you're solving, or you will solve, and how you will solve that problem profitably. Okay? We looked at a variety of successful business models. That doesn't mean that you have to use one of these business models. There are as many different business models as entrepreneurs can dream up. These are just some examples. I tried to show you a variety of models that have worked. There are other successful business models, and in the future there will be new ones that we haven't even conceived yet. So you don't have to follow one of these. You can conceive your own business model, or you can follow one that you've seen work successfully here in Nigeria, or that you've seen work successfully somewhere else, or that you've read about in a book. This is just to give you some ideas and some examples. Models change with time. We talked about trends. As the economies change, as technology changes, as populations change, as all sorts of factors change within the environment in which you're selling, business models will also change. Back in the early 1900s, if Ray Kroc had tried to start McDonald's with drive-through hamburger stands, it wouldn't have worked. People didn't eat outside their home. People didn't have automobiles and didn't have a need or a desire to drive through and just pick up their dinner at a window. But with the change in time, it worked. People wanted convenience. They wanted to be able to drive through. That was a model that came to be in the 50s that would not have worked earlier, that became very successful. There would not have been an eBay 30 years ago because we didn't have the internet, so we couldn't have online auctions. But it's something that works now. So as time changes, business models will change as well. And there are new models yet to be conceived. I'm quite confident that some of you here will come up with ideas for a new business model that we haven't seen yet. And you may be very, very successful with it, and I hope you are. So, as we say, put that thinking cap on and start thinking creatively. Think outside the box about what opportunity, what need you can fill with a product or a service that isn't being filled yet, or can be filled in a better way, and how you want to organize your business to be a success. The next thing we're going to talk about are business plans. And business plans, especially for very small companies, often seem intimidating. People say, I don't need a business plan, I'm just a little tiny business, or I can't do a business plan, it's way too complicated, I have to do all these fancy things and write up this fancy stuff and do all these calculations and these forms and so on and so forth, and I don't know how to do it, and I can't do it, and I don't know who to ask for help, and so forth. Business plans, though, are very, very important. No matter how small a business you are, it's important, it's critical that you have a business plan. It's been said that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. If you're direction and kind of wondering what to do and where to go and how to do it, like these folks in this car are, I encourage every one of you, if you don't already have one, to start writing a business plan. See where you want to go and what you need to do to get there, what turns you need to take, what road you need to follow, how fast or how slow you need to go. There are two audiences for a business plan. First and foremost, it's you as the business owner. The business plan will be your navigational tool, will be your guide on how to drive your business and what road to take and so forth, and how to manage your business along the way so that you can become as successful as possible. The other audience for your business plan is an external audience. You may ask why you need to be writing a plan for somebody outside your company, but there's very good reason. How many of you want to try to access money for your business? How many of you want a look? Of those of you who raised your hands, how many of you have a business plan? Good, see a couple, excellent. Every one of you who wants to find find money for your business needs to have a business plan, because any responsible investor, any responsible lender is going to ask to see one. And if you don't have a business plan, you won't even get in the door. So, your external audience for your business plan are your potential financiers, be it a bank, be it a silent partner, be it an angel investor, whoever. Your other business partners, your board of directors, anyone who has an interest in your a financial interest or a managerial interest in your business needs to be able to see a well thought out business plan. So you have two audiences, internal, yourself, and external. Now, that doesn't mean that your business plan needs to be fancy and needs to be 35 pages long and so forth. There are businesses that will have a 50-page business plan or a 100-page business plan. You don't have to do that. Your business plan can just be a couple of pages. What's most important is what I've abbreviated as CSR. It needs to be comprehensive, it should be simple, and it needs to be realistic. Better to have a simple, comprehensive, realistic business plan, even if it's just a couple of pages, than it is to have nothing. But you do need to go through the exercise of developing a business plan. It's not just to have a piece of paper, it's also the discipline and the thinking process that goes into it if it's done well, that will serve you very well. Your marketing, and your money. What do I mean by environment? Do I mean whether the river's getting polluted? Well, maybe. If you're producing something, you're dumping effluent into the river, then yeah, that's part of it. But what I mean by environment is the environment in which you're operating. Politically, what's the climate like? Is it a stable situation? Are people feeling optimistic? As much money available to spend? You want to think about what environment you're operating in and you're trying to sell it. If you want to take it to the Bank of Industry and ask for, it's just about impossible if you're operating in the informal economy to get a business loan. Has any experience in the pharmaceutical industry? Say you're going into the pharmaceutical industry and you have a pharmacist as part of your staff, you have a chemical engineer as part of your staff, and you have someone who has worked 25 years in a pharmaceutical manufacturing operation. Of the number of employees you have, how long you've been in business, and so forth. If they feel that you have too many employees for the size of operation you have, they will be very worried because they'll recognize that that is not sustainable, that you're spending far too much money on salaries and that you're not operating efficiently. On the other hand, if you have a very, very large operation that depends on a lot of people and you only have a few people, they're going to be very concerned that you don't have enough staff already trained in place to be able to run your business and to deliver the products or the services that you're selling. Offering. By offering, I mean the product or service that you're selling. In your business plan, you need to briefly describe what it is. You don't want to assume when you go into a banker with a business plan and a loan application that they automatically understand what your product is. You want to describe what the product or the service is, not just physically, but is it a high-end product? Is it a luxury good? Is it targeted for the low-cost market? Is it a no-frills kind of product? They're going to need to understand what your product or your service is. Method. By method here, I'm talking about how you get or manufacture or produce whatever it is you're selling. Maybe you're simply a reseller. Maybe all you do is you buy products wholesale and you turn around and resell them. That's okay. In that case, you're not manufacturing anything, but you are procuring the goods that you're selling. That would come under what I have listed here as method. If you are manufacturing something, then you still have to procure raw materials in order to be able to manufacture. Perhaps, and you have to be able to distribute whatever it is that you're selling. So you need to be able to describe the method. Maybe it's a service. Maybe it's a beauty salon. You need to be able to describe how you're going to deliver that service, be it haircuts or shampoos and blow dry or braiding or whatever it is. But you need, in a section that I'm calling method here, you need to be able to describe how it is that you're going to make and deliver whatever it is you sell. Market and marketing. Who is your target market? Am I your target market? Is it women between the age of 35 and 50, of medium income? Is it young mothers? Is it elderly people? Who is your target market? You need to be able to explain that. You want to quantify it. You want to put some numbers to that. If your target market is young mothers, what geographical area are you talking about, and roughly how many families with young children are there in that area? That will give you an idea of how many young mothers there are in that area. And that, I think, is probably why all of us are here today, me included. It's why the Bank of Industry is sponsoring this workshop, because at the end of the day, this is all about money. And a vast majority of you raised your hands when I asked how many of you want to try to get money for your business, want to get a business loan or investment of some sort. So you need to talk in your business plan about money. You need to talk about your overhead costs, your salaries for your owner, your managers, how much it costs to pay the rent or the mortgage for the building, how much every month. You need to talk about your labor costs for the people that are doing the actual labor, the production and so forth, who are doing the selling, how much you have to pay them. You need to calculate, or you should calculate, ratios of your costs to your revenue. And some of these things will be in the handout that you'll get. We'll talk about some of them in greater or lesser detail, but you need to have a section in your business plan on the money. What are the components, the very specific components of a business plan? A written business plan should first have an executive summary. And the nice thing about that is that's 1 page maximum. And that's no matter how long the rest of your business plan is, all the detailed section, the executive summary is exactly that. It's just a very, very concise summary of the key points of the rest of the business plan, so that that banker, who's very busy and has a long line of people wanting a loan, can read 1 page and decide if he or she wants to investigate any further. You have an introduction for the environment. You want to have an industry review, talk about the customer need, the product and service, major companies that are other companies that are operating in your same environment that are making similar or competitive products or services. What are the barriers to you entering or expanding in this market? Industry trends in the economy. your company, you want to have a summary of your business, what product and service you sell. You want an organizational overview, history of the company, the legal status, the structure, the experience of your key staff and management. It's also good to do what's called a SWOT analysis. Just list your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Just identifying those 4 things are a very, very easy way to take a good look at your company relative to your competitors. To buy equipment, if so, what equipment? You need to be very specific. Is it to pay rent? Is it to pay mortgage? Is it to pay deposits? Is it to pay installation fees for utilities? You need to write all of that out. If it's a business expansion, you need to list what the costs are associated with expanding your business. You need to list your operating expenses, and you should do this by month for a full year. What are your operating expenses? They're the money that you have to spend each month in order to keep your business going.